G'day there folks, it's Connor here again from Marky Industries and we're back with some more stories from Reddit. As always, if you enjoy these videos, be sure to hit like and subscribe and all that stuff, and let's get straight to the stories. Alrighty folks, we're on Am I the A-hole? This one was written by a throwaway account, and it's titled, Would I be the a-hole if I move out of our apartment knowing my fiance and his mum can't afford it without me? Throwaway because my fiance follows my main. Me, female 29, and my ex-fiancé, male 27, have been living together for about 1.5 years. Fiancé got his undergraduate degree, worked for a couple of years, and then decided to get an MBA, which is how we ended up in our city. We moved in together after he finished his MBA program. Fiancé is from the Midwest, and his mum has always wanted him to move back. When he told her he was staying here, she was heartbroken. I went to college and got my degree in a STEM field. After I graduated, I got a job with my current company and moved to the city where we currently live. It's a big international company with multiple locations in the US and international. I love my job, I like the company I work for, and the pay is pretty good. All in all, a pretty good deal. During COVID, my office shut down and we all went working from home. After COVID, they decided not to reopen this office, so I've been 100% working from home since early 2020. I currently make considerably more than him, mainly because I've been working for 7 years and I'm in tech. I'd been living by myself in a 1-bedroom apartment and just had my office set up in the living room since it was just me. When we moved in together, we decided to get a 2-bedroom apartment so I could use the extra room as an office. Because of this, I was paying 2/3 of the rent and he paid 1/3. We split everything else 50-50. So the problem started this past May. Fiance's mum told him she wanted to move to our city to be closer to him. She asked if she could stay with us while she looked for a job and got settled. She's a teacher, so figured she'd be able to get a teaching job pretty quickly. Because of that, I didn't really mind her staying with us, as I figured it would just be for a couple months over the summer. Since I thought it would only be for a couple of months, I moved my office into a corner of our bedroom, and fiancé bought a bed to put in the second bedroom. The problem is, she never applied for any teaching positions and has been living with us for 6 months now. She and I have really been struggling with each other since she moved in. I can't make her understand that I work full time. She constantly interrupts while I'm working, which is bad enough, but she even interrupts when I'm on Teams calls. She always asks me to take her places because she doesn't like to drive in our city. She has pretty outdated views on gender roles and is constantly giving me a hard time for not doing more around the house and making fiancé help with chores, do his own laundry, etc. The constant criticism and insults are just really wearing me down, and I hate having my office shoved in a corner of the bedroom. Back in September, I told my fiancé that since it looks like his mum is going to stay a while, we should split the rent 3 ways. He told me she can't afford that since she has to conserve money until she gets a job. I told him I wasn't happy paying extra for a bedroom I can't use, so finally he said we could do a 50-50 split. I could afford to pay the extra, but I hate the idea of funding her lifestyle. Every time I complain about her or the situation, he says he agrees but doesn't know what to do because he can't kick out his mum, and he won't talk to her about the way she treats me or how she behaves. When I ask what the long-term plan is, he just says he doesn't know. I've thought about giving him an ultimatum to tell her she has to leave, but I think he'd just end up resenting me for essentially putting his mum on the street. So, one of my girlfriends is losing her roommate at the end of February. Our lease renews June 1st. I'm very strongly considering moving out of our current apartment and moving in with her. I can afford to pay my part of rent on our current apartment and also half the rent at my friend's apartment. It's not ideal, but I'm not a big spender, so it's doable. The issue is, if he and his mum aren't able to pay for 1/3 of the rent each, there is no way they could cover the whole thing on their own. But I can't live like this anymore, so I'm pretty sure this is what I'll do, but I wanted to see if people thought I'd be the a-hole for leaving them like this. Yeah, not the a-hole for mine, but I think it's worth to bring up to your boyfriend or fiancé first that you are thinking of leaving if this doesn't change. Maybe that'll kick him into gear as well. Let's go to the comments. If you move out and pay rent for your old place and your new place, then you are foolish. There's no incentive for things to change because you're just letting it go and not putting your foot down. I suggest telling your boyfriend that either his mother is out in 60 days or you are. He has no problem letting her disrespect you in your home, and has no idea how long Mummy Dearest is planning to stay. Let me tell you, she plans on staying permanently, with you funding her lifestyle because your boyfriend has no spine. Not the a-hole. If there was ever a time for an ultimatum, this is it. Opie replies, "Sorry, I should have made that more clear. I'm on the lease in my current apartment, so I can't just up and leave, but I can afford to pay half the rent at the new place and have the rent at the old place for 3 months until my current lease is up." And to another commenter, "I'd only pay rent at the old place until the lease is up in June, so basically 3 months, and only because I don't want my credit tarnished." One downvoted commenter says, "It sounds like it would be best for you, to be honest. Mum isn't evicted, you guys can keep dating whilst living separately, and your work will not be disturbed. Or why not just find a studio flat for Mum?" Opie says, "I've suggested we find something for her, and even suggested we could help her out with rent until she gets a job, but I get the same answer no matter what. She has to conserve money, so she can't spend any more than she already is, which is 0. Is he going to be your ex because of this situation, or was he already an ex? Either way, not the a-hole, but I was just thinking, if you move out, maybe he'll see what he lost and be more motivated to get rid of his mum. That way he won't resent you for it." She replies, "He's probably going to be my ex because of this situation. Before she showed up, everything was good, but since she got in, it's a crap show. Honestly, at this point, we're just 2 roommates that happen to sleep in the same bed. I can't even remember the last time we had personal time because she's always around, always watching TV in the living room or on the other side of our bedroom wall." A heavily downvoted commenter says, "My other half never had an issue with my relatives moving in. My mum once moved in for a year. He never said a word. My brother moved in for 6 months. Again, he said nothing. He expected nothing from them. His sister moved in for over a year and nothing was said. I'm really shocked that so many people treat family like crap." Opie replies, "But how did your relatives treat your other half, or how did his sister treat you? And how did them being there affect your living arrangements and work arrangements? Did they interrupt your workday and affect your performance at work? I've had to squeeze my entire work setup into a cramped, uncomfortable corner. If she would just show some respect, it would have made a huge difference. But why would I want to support someone that treats me like crap, disregards the fact that I have a full-time job, is critical of everything I do, and insults me?" Yeah, absolutely. Opie updates 4 days later. I started off trying to reply to everyone's comments and keep up, but honestly I just got completely overwhelmed with all the comments. First off, I want to thank everyone for their feedback and comments, even the ones that were kind of harsh. Actually, probably especially the ones that were kind of harsh. I really needed some tough love to make me realize that I was letting my soon-to-be ex and his mum take advantage of me. The more comments I read, the more ticked off I got. Honestly, I think I'm more ticked at myself for allowing this to happen and not advocating for myself more. This past weekend, I got my soon-to-be ex alone so we could talk, which was actually harder than it should have been because his mum always tries to tag along when we do anything. Going through all the comments everyone left and the PMs people sent really helped me decide how to approach this, and also brought up a lot of good questions I should have thought of myself. Back to the discussion with the ex. I wanted to give him one more chance to pick us over his mum, not because I thought he would, but I just wanted to be able to tell myself I gave him the opportunity. I explained again about how unhappy I am with the situation, how it's affecting my work because of her constant interruptions, and just being unhappy and uncomfortable that I'm forced to work out of a corner in our bedroom. And I reminded him that until a few months ago, I was paying the majority of the rent, and being that I make so much more than him, it's really my salary that keeps us all afloat. And I also brought up again the way she treats me and talks to me, and he replied the same way he has been. He agreed it's not right how she acts and that it's really uncomfortable for us all. WTF, I don't care if she's uncomfortable. Previously, I would have dropped it there, but this time I told him how angry and disappointed I was that he let me pay for 2/3 of the rent when she first moved, and how unfair it was that I'm still paying for half when there are 3 people living there and she's the only one with her own bedroom. It was the same story. She has to conserve money since she doesn't have any income currently, which brought up the question of where all her stuff went when she moved. What money does she use for incidentals? So evidently, when she got divorced, She asked for the divorce after my ex went off for college. It doesn't sound like her husband or ex's dad wanted the divorce. His dad bought her out of the equity in their house. Ex didn't have any idea how much that was or how much is left. But until she moved here, she was working full-time as a teacher and living in a small apartment, so she should not have to tap into the divorce settlement money very much. Other than that, X didn't have much insight to her finances other than what she told him, that she has to conserve money. I told him straight up that I'm moving out before the end of the month, and from now on I'm only paying 25%, as some of the commenters pointed out. She has a whole bedroom while I have to share mine with a man-child, so she should have to pay twice as much. And after I move out, I'm not paying for anything else. No utilities, no food, nothing other than rent. I have a pretty idea what his finances are like, and if he has to pay 75% of the rent all by himself, it's going to take a huge chunk of his net income. And after he pays utilities and buys groceries, there won't be anything left for incidentals. Rent was due on the 1st, but it's not late until after the 5th, so he has 2 days to come up with the money. If he doesn't come up with it, and I end up covering, then I'll reduce the amount I pay in future months. The only reason I'm going to keep paying for any of the rent is even after I move out, I'm still on the hook. I talked to the leasing office and they explained that since X and I signed a single rental agreement together, example, one contract we both signed as opposed to 2 contracts we signed individually, we are both responsible for the rent. They don't care who actually pays as long as it gets paid. The only alternative would be if he agrees to sign a new lease by himself or together with his mum, but in all likelihood, he wouldn't be able to pass the credit check on his own, so I'm kinda stuck. I don't think he'll do anything stupid though, because he's going to need to find some place to live after this, and a collection on his credit report wouldn't be good. I also told him that I'm going to find some place to work during the day until I move so she can't bother me. My friend I'm moving in with said I could work there during the day, since she and her current roommate have in-person 9-to-5s. I took her up on that for now. After living with his mum, I'm not about to overstay my welcome, so I'm going to find some other options that I can rotate through. Someone suggested checking out the public library, or if it comes to it, I'll get a membership at one of those we work kind of places. Just in case, I brought my important papers and files and valuables, and my friend is storing them for me until I move in. He really didn't take it well. The surprising thing to me is that he was surprised by everything. He seemed really shocked that I wasn't prioritizing his mum. I really got the feeling that he sincerely believed I wanted to take care of her as much as him, and he kept saying stuff like, "What about my mum? What am I going to tell her? That's how she is, but we still need to help her," etc. He asked about our relationship and the engagement. I told him after I move out I need some space from him. In a few months, when we've both had some time and space to process what happened, if we both agree we can talk about the relationship, but he'd have to prove that he's going to have my back going forward and will set boundaries with his mum. I told him that just to avoid more drama, but I don't see a future in which we are together. I told him he needs to tell his mum because she's not my responsibility or problem, and she'll know something's up when I start moving my stuff out. He hasn't told her what's going on yet, but this weekend I'm going to start moving things, so he doesn't have much time. My friend's current roommate starts a new job in another state on the 3rd, so in reality I can probably move in 2 to 3 weeks, just depending when she actually leaves. I don't expect him to do anything bad, other than sulk and complain, but if he does something stupid or doesn't pay his part of the rent, the ace up my sleeve is I'll tell the leasing office his mum moved in, which is prohibited in the lease. Honestly, getting evicted would solve a lot of my problems right now, so it's a pretty valid threat, I think. Now that I've mentally and emotionally separated myself from him and his mum, I'm looking forward to her reaction when he tells her what's going on. If it gets too ugly, I'll find a cheap Airbnb or a hotel or something. I've had some friends, including the one I'm moving in with, offer to let me couch surf for a few weeks, but I just can't do that to someone else. So that's it. I'm leaving, and I really don't care how that affects them. One comment says, "Notify your landlord in writing that you're moving out and to take you off the lease after June the 1st. You wouldn't want to do nothing and accidentally trigger an automatic renewal." Opie says, "Already did that. I did it before I went to talk to the front office and confirmed that they received it while I was down there." Stick with your plan. You're almost free. Do not ever be pulled back into this toxic situation. Don't forget that the two of them are still lying to you. You pay 1/3 and he'll figure out the rest. The mother has money to pay her part. Don't be fooled. Opie says, nope, I'm paying 25%. She has a whole bedroom to herself while I have to share, so she should have to pay more. I just wish I had more of a backbone when this whole fiasco started. Yeah, shoulda, coulda, woulda, but I think Opie's making amends now. Now for another update. Last week I started working out of my friend's apartment, the one I'm moving in with, so I didn't see X's mum on Monday. Tuesday, around lunch, she sent me a text asking where I was. I told her I was working and I'd be home late tonight. She replied that X told her I wasn't going to be contributing as much, so she had to loan him money for rent. That wasn't a surprise to me, so I just replied with a thumbs up emoji. I had plans with my friend and her roommate, who I'm also friends with, to go out for dinner and then get some drinks, so by the time I got home, I was after midnight and X's mum was already asleep. The fun started Wednesday morning. I was getting ready to go to work at my friend's place when X's mum stopped me and said we need to discuss my financial situation. Then she went on a whole tirade about her having to cover my part of the rent, me making foolish choices by going out to dinner when I couldn't even pay rent. I was irresponsible with money and inconsiderate of the impact it had on others, blah blah blah. She went on to say that if she was going to have to pay my share of the rent, that she expected me to do a better job of keeping on top of chores and keeping the apartment clean and organized. I told her I was moving out, since obviously soon-to-be ex hadn't told her yet. She seemed, I don't know, pleased with herself. All she had to say was, maybe that's for the best. When I got home that night, right off the bat, she wanted to talk. She said instead of me moving out, we could get a bigger apartment and she'd, quote, be willing to help by paying. The difference between a 2-bedroom and a 3-bedroom. Then we could go back to the arrangement X and I had before she moved in, me paying 2/3 of the balance and him paying 1/3. Honestly, when she was saying this, I think my brain vapor locked. She was making it sound like she was doing us a favor by offering to pay the increase in rent. Apparently, this man-child who tells his mum literally every single thing about our lives and relationship hadn't bothered to tell his mum how much I was actually contributing. It seems like once she discovered X wasn't paying for everything like she thought, she wasn't as excited about me moving out. I tried to be polite and told her I'd already given notice to our apartment complex that I was moving out at the end of the month and already committed to moving in with my friend. She kept pushing the issue and said if she was willing to pay the difference, I should just stay because that would really be the best for everyone. By then I was getting annoyed and told her that because of the way she's been acting and treating me, I had no interest in living with her anymore. That's when the best line of this whole dumpster fire came out of her mouth. She said she was worried I was taking advantage of her son, and if we'd told her about our financial arrangement, she would have been more understanding of why I wasn't keeping up with the apartment. I told her maybe a good lesson from this is to try being nice to everyone in the future and not just the people you think can help you, and I asked her why she didn't help out more since she wasn't doing anything productive all day. She did not like either of those comments, and it got pretty hostile, with both of us yelling at each other. And to be fair, we both said some pretty awful things to one another. Finally, I told her I was going to inform the rental office that she had been living there contrary to the lease agreement because getting evicted would be worth it to see her living on the street. I grabbed my laptop and went to my friend's. I didn't even bother packing an overnight bag. Next afternoon, Thursday, X texted me and said he had added his mum to the lease, effective the 1st of the month, and that she and his dad, I have no idea how that poor man got roped into this, would pay half the rent and X would pay the other half. I confirmed with the property manager that I was off the lease and didn't have any further obligation. I got it in an email, so I have a record. I put disconnect orders in for the utilities under my name and told him to call and set up accounts under his name. I'm going to lose the damage deposit. It goes to whoever is living there when the lease ends, but it's a small price to pay to be free. On the way home, I stopped and got a bunch of boxes to pack my stuff up. She was pretty hostile when I got home, and when she saw how much I was taking, she got worse. I ended up taking Friday off to finish packing, and on Saturday got some friends to help move stuff to my new place. I'm going to pay my friends some rent for the next 2 weeks until I move out. They didn't want me to, but I'm not going to stay in someone's home and not contribute. If nothing else, living with X and his mum taught me that. Last night, X and I got together and talked for the first time since Saturday. He said his mum is staying until June, when the lease is up, then she's moving back to her hometown. According to him, she just really didn't like living here, and that's why she didn't try to find a job. Then he asked how long a break I thought we should take. A few commenters gave me a hard time for stringing him along, so I was brutally honest and told him I could not be with someone that allowed others to treat me the way he allowed his mum to treat me, and that I hoped he'd learn to stand on his own and establish some boundaries. He looked like he was going to cry and just got up and left. As far as I'm concerned, this whole thing is over and done. I'm going to call it a learning experience and be glad I found out how awful X's mum is before we got married. The thing that amazes me is the amount of damage this woman leaves in her wake and how utterly oblivious she is. She destroyed our engagement and relationship, is leaving X in a much worse financial situation, pushed back her ex-husband's retirement by I don't know how many years, since now he likely has to pay off the mortgage, or second mortgage, he had to get to pay her half of the equity. And she made my life hell for 6+ months, and she's walking away completely unscathed. According to my ex, she's going back to her hometown and picking up her old teaching job. I'm thinking about going to visit my parents next week and working from their house. I want to tell them how boring and undramatic they are and how I'm so grateful for that and love them for it, lol. Man, yeah, I'm getting angry on OP's behalf. Let's read some final comments. What was OP's stuff? Pretty much everything in the kitchen was mine. When we moved in together, he was fresh out of grad school and didn't have much of anything. He wasn't quite as bad as Kate Bishop and Hawkeye, like 1 plate, 1 fork, 1 spoon, but it was close, lol. Everything in the second bedroom and my office other than the bed and his mum's clothes, a chest of drawers, some shelves, and a small TV. The couch was his, bed is mine. I let him buy it from me, mainly because I didn't want to deal with moving it. Plus some assorted small furniture and stuff. The apartment is kind of barren now, lol. Maybe Mummy will help him decorate. Quote, then he asked how long a break I thought we should take. I lost my crap when I read that. I hope this whole experience has opened his eyes and at least matured him to a small degree. Opie says, I have to admit, I thought he'd be able to read the room on his own, but this helped validate my feelings on the whole thing. On X's mum's antics. Anytime we asked her to do something like unloading or loading the dishwasher or other minor chores, she'd complain that we were asking her to take care of our apartment. It really was mind-blowing that she would complain like this but literally wouldn't do anything unless my ex basically begged, and then she'd make a big deal over all the help she was giving us. It sounds like your ex wanted to save his pride and avoid disappointing his mother by concealing how much of the expenses you were paying, and he happily threw you under the bus to do so. Even when confronted with what his mother was doing to you as a result of his lies, he kept it up. His mother was damaging to your relationship, but it was mostly him that wrecked it by betraying you like that. I'm just glad you found out the truth about the kind of person he is before you got married. Opie says, I do think this is a lot of it. She made a really big deal about him getting an MBA, and I think she assumed he was going to be making a huge salary out of the gate. To be fair, he probably will make good money in the future, but he needs to put his time in and work for it. I think he was afraid or embarrassed to tell her what he really made. Plus, he has student loans for his MBA to pay for, so he's going to have a few lean years. But we all do, so there's nothing wrong with it other than it didn't match her expectations. I wonder what mother-in-law's endgame was, probably to get her son to move back home to their hometown. Now that she's husbandless, she wants her son to step into that role, and he wouldn't do that while married and away. But now he won't be married and can't afford to live away. Diabolical. She replies, I've been asking myself the same thing since I heard she's planning to move back home. Honestly, I think you nailed it, especially when you factor in her divorcing her husband when X went to college. He told me about that before his mum moved here, and I remember thinking at the time that it was kind of weird. I just figured they were one of those couples that stayed together for the kids, but now it seems so much worse. Yes, glad you got out. He needed to hear the harsh truth of not coming back to him. He did this to himself when he didn't back you up. Who wants to be with a spineless jellyfish? Opie says, honestly, I was intentionally kind of a bitch. He's complicit in torching our relationship, but I did love him. I was worried if I wasn't blunt with him, he'd try to talk me into trying again, and I wanted to close that door for good. And where's X's dad in all of this? Well, from the way my ex talked, I don't think his dad wanted to get a divorce. It makes me wonder if he thinks this might be a way to convince her to go back to him. I can't imagine why he would want her to, but it's the only explanation I can think of. Alrighty guys, I'm going to leave that one there. In the end, yeah, the mother-in-law did, ruin their relationship, but at the end of the day, she kind of saved her from a marriage with a spineless idiot. So silver linings, I suppose. Anyway guys, what are your thoughts about that one? Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, we're going to move on to another story. Okie dokie, back over on relationships. This one was written by user Unique Emergency, and it's titled Nightmare Situation, Me with Partner, My Son and His Nephew. 4 years ago, I met Bob, 40 male. Bob had recently become the guardian of his nephew Ben after the death of Ben's parents in a car accident. Ben is the same age as my son, Jason, 11 at the time, now 15. At first, it seemed perfect. I was over the moon at finding a man who was not put off by the prospect of taking on a soon-to-be teenage stepson. Jason's father is not in the picture, and in spite of being very different personalities, the boys got along from the beginning. So Bob and Ben moved into my house within less than a year. Ben was always a quieter, more creative kid, whereas Jason is more athletic and boisterous, and from the start I got the sense that Bob understood Jason's way of being more than he did Ben's. At first he would take them both to sports games, but Ben obviously had no interest, and so pretty soon he just took Jason. At the time it seemed like a natural choice. Ben was bored at the games and Jason honestly reveled in having all of Bob's attention, but after that things started unraveling. As they grew older, the difference in the boys became more obvious, their choices of clothing, hairstyle, friends, music, hobbies, etc., and so did Bob's preference. He started making little comments, comparing them and encouraging Ben to be more like Jason. At first it seemed like he was trying to be helpful, thinking that Jason's way of being was healthier. He's more outgoing, has a more active social life, etc., because that's what he remembered from his own experience. But after a while, there was a clear snidiness there which it was impossible not to hear. My son has always had a strong protective streak or sense of fairness, and in spite of their differences and the late age they were introduced, he and Ben are very close. So Jason's reaction to Bob's remarks favouring him was to take Ben's side. He stopped going to games with Bob and generally liking him, and for a while became openly hostile on Ben's behalf. That stopped once he and Bob had a major argument. Jason backed down at that point because, he told me, he realised that if he kept making himself unpleasant, Bob and I might break up, in which case Ben would have to leave too. Since then, with a few exceptions, he has been coldly civil. Meanwhile, Bob has come to believe that Ben is gay based on what I consider spurious evidence, not that it matters to me whether he is or not. He wanted to send him to a military-type reform school, and when I vetoed that, his behaviour towards Ben has escalated to a subtle kind of downright nastiness. Needless to say, all of the above strained Bob's and my relationship to breaking point, and then broke it. Seeing his ongoing behaviour towards a child who needs him, I can no longer look at him with anything but disgust. The thought of him touching me makes my skin crawl, and I desperately want him out of my house. We're not married, and it's still in my sole name, thank God, but now I have the same problem Jason was worried about. If I end the relationship and kick Bob out, Ben will have to go too, since legally I have no tie to him whatever. He's 15 now, and although he has borne everything by stoically ignoring Bob, I can't in good conscience let that man be solely responsible for him. For what it's worth, I've always tried to stick up for him and get Bob to see that there are many types of boys in the world, and all of them are equally okay. Not to mention, I don't think Jason would ever forgive me if I did. I would happily take guardianship of Ben if I could. Even if Bob made no financial contribution at all, we could manage if we cut back on luxuries. My concern is that I am far from sure Bob would agree. However he personally feels about Ben. Ben is still his flesh and blood, and Bob feels strongly about that. To be honest, I think it's part of the reason he resents Ben so much. Ben is the last of the line, and not turning out how Bob thinks his family should be represented. If I were to start a conversation along those lines, and Bob refused to allow Ben to stay, it would be incredibly difficult to roll back. The idea of having to continue to play his supportive wife to stop him leaving of his own accord for another 2.5 years, till Ben turns 18, sounds like a nightmare, but the alternative is worse. What is the best way to manage and get through this? Yeah, it's a precarious situation. I'm sure there's some sort of arrangement that could happen. I wonder what Ben thinks about all of this as well. Let's see what the Reddit hive mind thinks. So you've gotten good advice here. Just to reiterate, talk to Ben. Tell him that he always has a home with you, and that you're not going to do anything which will make his home situation unstable. Tell him you love him and appreciate him for who he is, and that you know things are fraught. I know you don't particularly think Ben is gay, but I think you should talk to him in a way that makes it clear that you don't care, without saying as much. Talk to a lawyer. Find out how, if you kick Bob out, Ben can stay. How old does he have to be to make that choice? You want to avoid a legal fight, but it's good to know what the law is. Talk to your son. Tell him you appreciate him standing up for Ben to Bob. Tell him that you agree that Bob is behaving unacceptably. Tell him that you're trying to figure out a way to keep Ben safe from Bob, and that you'll never take Bob's side over him and Ben. Tell him you recognize that the current situation with Bob is unhealthy for everyone, and that you're actively trying to figure out a way to resolve it while protecting Ben. Don't tell Bob any of this. Have all these conversations quietly until you're ready to take action because you've had the discussion with a lawyer. Furthermore, once you're ready to take action, talk to Ben and Jason before you tell Bob. Opie replies, "Thank you very much for saying this. I must admit, in all of this, I've gone from trying to smooth things between them and Bob to trying to find a way out for all of us, and have not prioritized communicating with the boys as much as I could have. I'm going to try to get some alone time with each of them this weekend to at least reassure them that I see what's happening and value them." Talk to Bob and let him know you want to legally adopt Ben. Probably wise not to mention it's as breakup custody insurance. Just say that you've really come to see him as family and both boys as your sons, and you want to make it official. If Bob agrees, you'll have some play for custody. Also, you aren't morally obligated to be in a sexual relationship with someone who you dislike to stay in Ben's life. That's not a fair requirement. I know you're worried the boys will hate or be mad at you, including your son Jason, but I'd talk to Jason honestly one-on-one if and when you do break up with Bob. Tell him that you love Ben and want to look out for him and stay in his life as much as you can, and you've been staying in the relationship for a while for that reason, but you've reached the point where you just can't keep being with a man who you don't see as a good person. I would hope that Jason, who you say is naturally protective, will understand and be protective of you, his own mother, if you show him your feelings and good intentions, rather than condemn you for not prostituting yourself. I very much doubt your son would expect that of you. None of us expect that of you. As for Ben, if you break up and Bob won't let you have any custody, talk to Ben about it. Tell him you love him, you see him as a son, and the way Bob treats him is wrong, and why you don't respect Bob. Tell Ben that he has done nothing wrong, and you very much want to stay a part of his life, and you will try to as much as Bob allows, but the current situation is blah. You'll be talking to a lawyer, and that if nothing else, Ben should know that he's always welcome to move back the minute he turns 18. Opie says, "Thank you for saying that. You are right. I know Jason would understand if I explained to him. I think my real problem is that if something happened to Ben, I would have a hard time forgiving myself. At the moment, I'm hoping it won't come to either of those situations. The comments here have given me some hope, and I'm going to speak to a lawyer about our options." An edit. Thank you all so much for your support, advice, and kind words. Your comments have given me a lot to think about, and I'll be making contact with a family lawyer shortly. Okay, over a month later, an update. Hi again everyone. I posted about my family problem about a month ago and was bowled over by the amount of kind and extremely helpful comments I got. Someone requested an update, so I'm posting now to tell you what's happened since. To be honest, it's also to unburden myself. The boys are really sweet, but I obviously can't talk to them about these things, and there aren't a lot of people in my life I feel comfortable sharing all the details with. I suppose I'm embarrassed. The week after my original post, I met with a family lawyer I know to go over options. I actually wrote down the legal suggestions posted here to discuss with her, but unfortunately, after going over each and several others in detail, we had to conclude that for each one, while it might technically be feasible, it would either take too long to be practical or require things from Bob or from Ben, which for various reasons were not ideal. Following the meeting, I was mulling things over and decided to take a long hard look at our finances to see what might be affordable as a compromise, such as perhaps sending Ben to a good boarding school and pay tuition up front, so that if I then left Bob, it would be easier and cheaper for him to leave Ben there rather than move him to a different school. Anyway, I went over our financial records with a fine-toothed comb, and that's when I discovered Bob was cheating on me, and had been for the entirety of our relationship. It turns out that prior to Ben's parents' death, Bob had been about to move in with another woman. This woman didn't want kids, so when Bob was suddenly faced with taking custody of Ben or seeing him placed in foster care, she made it clear she would not be involved. For the record, I can't say I blame her. I love my boys with all my heart, but asking someone who never wanted kids to parent a bereaved 11-year-old she has never met is not in anyone's best interest, in my opinion. When I confronted him about the affair, he didn't even attempt to deny it. He seemed ashamed, good, and just asked what happened next. So I told him that next he was going to get his stuff and get out of my house. But first, ask Ben if he wants to go or stay, because it wouldn't be fair to disrupt the poor kid's life any further. Ben quickly said he'd prefer to stay, and Bob seemed frankly relieved. He moved out that weekend and I haven't seen him since. We've been in touch by text to discuss financial arrangements though, and last week he sent me money to cover Ben's basic expenses. Nothing like as much as child support, but under the circumstances I'll take it and be glad. From his attitude, I take it that he's seeing this as a long-term thing, but even if he doesn't, according to the family lawyer, he's leaving Ben with me even for a while, along with Ben's age and the fact that Bob is his guardian rather than his father, would make it easier to build a case for Ben to stay, even if Bob does try to fight it. The lawyer is confident that such a battle could be won, or at least dragged out till Ben is 18 and it doesn't matter anymore. So that, as you can imagine, has been an enormous relief. That makes it that much harder to admit that finding out about Bob has still hit me hard. The fact is that, even though I was absolutely done with him and wanted him out, there was a time I truly believed he wanted to be with me and that we could build a life together. I knew our relationship wasn't a romance for the ages or anything like that, but it was by far the best I'd had since before my son was born, and I really thought we cared for and valued one another. Now I realize that all he ever wanted from me was a mother for Ben. He as good as admitted it, and in retrospect it makes complete sense. That's why he never wanted to get married or buy into my house, even though I offered, though now of course I'm grateful, because he wanted to make it as easy as possible to split from me once Ben was old enough to no longer require my services. I think it might even explain why he was so hard on Ben and grasping at straws for a reason to send him away. I never expected it of him based on what else I knew, or I never would have been with him, but if he was blaming Ben for getting in the way of his life and simultaneously feeling guilty for, that could turn a mild-mannered person mean, I think. Maybe he even thought if Ben was away most of the time, the other woman would be willing to compromise for a few years. I don't know. I've even been wondering whether he decided to pursue me before we even met. The boys met first through an extracurricular where they became friends. It's possible that Jason mentioned my being single in passing, allowing Bob to identify me as potentially suitable before we ever met. I'm sorry this is such a mopey post. I truly am grateful for the way things worked out. I think it's the best possible solution for everyone under the circumstances, and not one I could have achieved without Bob's help. And the boys have been wonderful. They didn't know I was trying to get Bob out anyway, so they've been treating me very gently, or as gently as you can expect teenage boys to be anyway, and trying to pretend they aren't thrilled Bob is gone when I'm in the room. I'm glad of that, to be honest. I am so grateful he's gone, and Ben is still safe here with us. I just need a bit of time to really remember it, I think. Wow, okay, there you go. I mean, all things considered, this is the best case scenario. It's kind of sad that Bob is willing to just give his kid up like that so easily, but I suppose it's a little better than the alternative of Ben living with Bob and Bob treating him like crap for the rest of his teenage years, or maybe even life. Let's read some final comments. I think what stuck with me the most was Jason saying he realized that if he kept being rude to Bob, him and OP would break up and that meant Ben would leave and Jason wanted Ben to stay. I don't know why that got to me so much, but it did. So much empathy for his brother from another mother that he was able to put his own feelings aside to keep his brother safe and with a great mum. OP is doing a lot of things right to raise two boys like that. I wish them all the best and hope Bob gets what he deserves. I did not go into this expecting to be relieved that OP's partner was cheating, giving her a way to get the best result for the kids. Ben and Jason are so lucky to have OP because OP is such an awesome mother and I wish them well. As for Bob, he can F off. Yeah, that about sums it up. Anyway guys, what are your thoughts about that one? Let me know in the comments below. Either way, that's it from me today. Hope you guys enjoyed those stories. Thanks for making it to the end, and I'll see you all in the next video. Have a good day. Cheers.